When God closes a door, He opens something better. Sometimes God closes a door after you've already built your heart around what was on the other side. You didn't just lose an opportunity. You lost the future you imagined every night before sleep. The plans felt real. The peace felt promised. And then, without warning, everything stopped. A young man stands by a window, hands resting on the frame, cool evening light washing over his face as the city fades outside. What breaks you isn't just that it ended. It's that you trusted God with it. You believed this was the path He chose for you. And now you're standing still, trying to understand how faith and disappointment can exist in the same moment. The young man sits alone on a rooftop ledge, legs hanging, shoulders slightly hunched, wide open sky above him. You keep replaying the prayers you whispered. You wonder if you missed a sign, or if God is asking you to trust Him in a way that hurts more than you expected. Because when God closes a door, it never feels like protection at first. It feels like loss. The young man walks alone down an empty street at twilight, long shadows stretching ahead of him. When God closes a door, the pain doesn't arrive all at once. It settles in slowly, like a quiet weight on your chest. You wake up each morning expecting life to feel normal again, but something inside you knows it isn't. The future you were walking toward has stopped, and now you're standing still, unsure where to place your next step. You try to pray the same way you used to, but the words feel heavier. Not because your faith is gone, but because your heart is tired. You trusted God with this part of your life. You believed He was leading you there. And now you're left wondering why He would let it end after you finally felt peace about it. A young man sits on the edge of his bed, shoulders relaxed, but heavy, soft morning light touching his face. What hurts most is the silence. God doesn't rush to explain Himself. He doesn't show you the full picture. Instead, He invites you into a season where trust has to exist without clarity. This is where faith feels less like confidence and more like endurance. A young man stands still near a window, hands loosely at his sides, city blurred outside. But God never closes a door without reason. If He allowed this to end, it's because continuing would have slowly taken something from you. Your peace, your character, or your future. Some paths look right only because we cannot yet see where they led. A young man walks alone down a quiet sidewalk, hands in hoodie pockets, long shadows around him. God's protection often feels like loss before it feels like love. He blocks what would break you later, even if it breaks your heart now. And while you may not understand this moment yet, God is already working ahead of you, preparing something that fits who you are becoming, not who you used to be. A young man pauses on a rooftop, leaning slightly on a railing, open sky stretching wide above him. This season is not the end of your story. It is the space where God gently redirects your steps, even when the road ahead is still unclear. A young man sits quietly on a park bench, breathing slowly, light filtering through trees. After the door closes, God often leads you into a space you never asked for. The in-between. It's not where you were, and it's not where you're going. It's the quiet stretch where nothing seems to move, yet everything inside you is being reshaped. This is where impatience rises, and faith is tested in ways comfort never could. You begin to realize that God is less focused on quickly fixing your situation and more focused on strengthening your foundation. He slows you down on purpose, not to frustrate you, but to protect you from running ahead with a heart that still needs healing. A young man sits at a small table by a window, hands wrapped around a mug, morning light soft and calm. In this season, God begins to show you things you ignored when life was busy. Patterns, attachments, expectations you quietly placed above Him. What you thought was a delay is actually an invitation to realignment. A young man walks slowly along a river path, water moving gently beside him. God is not silent because He is distant. He is silent Because He is working in places you cannot see yet. Growth often happens underground, long before anything changes on the surface. And right now your roots are being strengthened. A young man stands still in an open field, light breeze visible in his clothing, sky wide above. This waiting is teaching you endurance. It's teaching you to trust God's timing more than your own urgency. And slowly, almost without noticing, your faith begins to mature. It becomes quieter, deeper, and less dependent on outcomes. A young man sits on steps outside a building, elbows resting on knees, calm expression forming. God is not delaying your life. He is preparing you for something that requires more strength than you had before. And when the next door opens, you won't walk through it desperate or unsure. You'll walk through it steady, grounded, and ready. A young man stands at the edge of a rooftop, looking out calmly over the horizon as light begins to soften. There comes a moment in this season when something inside you quietly shifts. The situation hasn't changed yet, but you have. The pain no longer controls every thought. The questions don't feel as sharp, and without realizing it, you start breathing a little easier. This is usually when God begins to rebuild what was shaken, not by giving you everything back, but by showing you who you are without it. You start noticing strength where you once felt weakness. You begin trusting God, not because life makes sense, but because you've seen Him carry you through confusion. A young man walks slowly through a quiet neighborhood, sunlight breaking gently between buildings. You realize that what ended did not destroy you. It refined you. It stripped away what you leaned on more than God. And in that stripping, space was created. Space for clarity. Space for peace. Space for something better to grow. A young man pauses at a crosswalk, standing still as light reflects on the pavement. This is where faith becomes personal. Not loud, not rushed, just steady. You stop asking God to fix everything and start asking Him to guide you through today. And somehow, that feels enough. A young man sits at a small cafe table near a window, hands relaxed, eyes thoughtful. God often waits until your grip loosens before He moves. Not because He wants you to struggle, but because He wants to give you something you won't be afraid to receive. Something you won't cling to out of fear of losing it. A young man stands on a hill or elevated path, looking across a wide open view. You are learning that God's timing doesn't rush healing. It completes it. And while you still don't see the full picture, you now trust the hand that's holding the brush. A young man sits peacefully on a bench, hands resting loosely, expression calm. This is the moment where waiting turns into readiness, even before the next door appears. This is the stage where God begins to gently show you why the old door had to close. Not with loud explanations, but with quiet realizations. You start to see how limited that path was, how much pressure you were carrying just to keep it alive, how often you were shrinking yourself to fit into something God never designed to hold you. The young man walks through a bright hallway or open space, light filling the area ahead of him. You notice that your prayers are changing. You're no longer begging God to reopen what closed. You're asking Him to lead you where you can grow. And that shift alone brings peace. Because for the first time, you trust that God's plan is not just good, it's better. The young man stands still near a window, eyes lifted slightly, calm expression forming. God never removes something without intending to replace it with something deeper. Maybe not immediately, maybe not in the way you expected, but always in a way that protects your future and strengthens your faith. You start to feel aligned again, not rushed, not anxious, not desperate, just steady. God is teaching you that what's meant for you will not require you to chase it, force it, or fear losing it. This is where trust feels lighter, where hope feels safer, where you finally believe that God's no was never rejection. It was direction. You are no longer waiting in fear. You are waiting in faith. And that changes everything. By the time the new door begins to form, you are no longer the same person who stood crying at the closed one. You are calmer now, stronger, more grounded in God than you were before. And that change matters more than you realize. What God is opening next does not need you to beg for it. It does not require you to abandon your peace to keep it. It meets you where you are, whole, healed, and ready. That is how you know it is from Him. God didn't close that door to take something from you. He closed it to protect what He placed inside you, to keep you from settling, to keep you from staying in something that would have limited who you were becoming. Now you understand that God's timing was not late. It was precise. Every delay shaped you. Every unanswered prayer strengthened you. Every closed door redirected you towards something that fits your faith, not just your desire. If you are standing in front of a closed door right now, don't rush past the pain. Sit with God in it. Let Him speak in the quiet. Let Him heal what you didn't know was wounded. Because what He is opening next will require the strength you're building now. Trust Him here. Not because you see the outcome, but because you know His heart. And if this message spoke to where you are today, take a quiet moment to reflect, stay connected, and walk forward in faith, knowing that what God opens next will be better than what He closed.